Okay, I think we're combobulated now. So good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Um, I don't see anybody who's new to us today. Um, let's do some quick updates and then we'll get to McKindy. He's got lots of important things to talk to us about today. He's got his dog and pony show today, so I'll let that go now. My son always accuses me of repeating myself, so I will let that joke go now. Um, Mark, is there anything from the feds that we need to hear about, or not much?
Um, NTIA, other than the
Mark,
risk.
please introduce
Oh,
yourself.
sure, certainly. Sorry. Mark Goldstein, International Research Center and Chair of ATIC.
Levels higher than Tom and, said they had a capability and then
Brian, you should be on mute.
There you go.
There we go. Sorry. Um, at the NTIA, it has been quiet other than the listening sessions, expecting any time now for them to actually announce what's called their plan for non-deployment funding to be followed by guidelines, to be followed by state and territorial implementation, but still hanging on that. The House did pass some permitting reform, bipartisan, but it was primarily for federal lands. Um, Locally, Google executed a fiber agreement with Apache Junction, making that the fifth Valley city that they're deploying in or will deploy in, including Chandler and Mesa among the five. And we have an HEIC board meeting next Wednesday at noon. I'll put a link in the chat for that. That's all I can think of offhand.
Okay. Anybody else? So, Bill, I'd asked you earlier, is any updates that you have?
Yeah, just kind of along those lines, I'll post this link in the chat. But our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Tim House, presented yesterday or testified yesterday in front of Congress, the Education and Workforce Committee. And I'll post a link to that in the chat. But he obviously spoke about the need for training, the need for funding, the release of the excess BEAD funds for workforce development, and that was one thing I wanted to share. The other is about a week and a half ago, I presented to the Utah Broadband Association, same topic, workforce development. They were doing a training session for all of their BEAD awardees, and I can post that as well. So just continuing to work on trying to get uh, the release of funds for BEAD and continue to get training and our TIRAP program moving forward.
Bill, just remind people who you are.
Sorry, you didn't even yell at me because I started that. I'm Bill DiAugustino. I'm a senior advisor with the Wireless Infrastructure Association.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about wireless, Brian, anything that you need to update us on at this point? I don't know if there's been any big changes lately, but
Yeah, not a whole lot of big changes lately. I think one of the probably the most is the NTIA has announced a notice of funding opportunity really focused on AI, and so we'll see what that entails as more details come out. I think there's some NTIA listening sessions coming up in the next week or so to get more information on that.
okay. Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Hey, Sam, can we put you on the spot and can you give us a quickie update? What's happened with Department of Ed?
No real updates as of right now. We're still just getting a few more pre-approvals sent out for different broadband projects that are coming up, but no specific updates.
Okay, thank you. So while we're talking about education, Alexis, thanks for joining us this morning. You want to introduce yourself? I know you've been here before, but it's been a while. Want to introduce yourself and give us anything, any updates that you might have?
Sure. Hey, sorry, I'm looking for my unmute button. Alexis Susdorf. I support a variety of clients with interests, anything from local cities and counties to higher education and school districts. So just got a lot of different sort of interests in this work. But let's see, updates on our end. A lot of my work right now just seems to be in the legislative space, so not necessarily the nexus of broadband and such, but definitely a lot going on down there with interweaved interest to this group. So just sort of here to listen and learn, but nice to see and meet everyone.
So Alexis, if I remember correctly, you are the executive director of the National Rural Schools Association.
Not me, nope.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
Oops.
you're okay. The new rural schools director is actually Greg Wyman. I work closely with him here in Arizona. But no, I support a group called the Greater Phoenix Educational Management Council. We're 68 school districts across Arizona. I support Arizona Western College over in the Yuma La Paz County area. And then my local clients are City of Prescott as well as Yuma County. And I just help them on local, state, and federal kind of initiatives for them. That's helpful.
So what are you hearing from the school districts that you're working with?
I mean, I'm hearing, money is tight always. I'm hearing infrastructure, especially in our rural communities, in the broadband space is critical. Everyone's very excited about the new things coming. I'd say just really recent and relative is some of these interoperability connections. There's been some investments in our state for sort of interoperability dealing with school safety, which is great, but we're quickly realizing that the infrastructure that some of our schools have, not necessarily the urban, but more in the rural communities, does not mesh with some of this great interoperability communications. I mean, when they're operating with programs that are 20 plus years age, this new modern age technology just literally does not work combined with very, very slow internet speed. So that seems to be taking a lot of time and interest at this point in time for me in the sort of interoperability and how that all kind of will work with the programs and systems and truly dollars that our schools have, which is very limited. So that's where I'm at today.
Okay, thank you. Molly, you have any updates?
Just a very quick one.
Mala.
Oh, oops. I'm Mala Muralidharan. Thank you for reminding me. Mala Muralidharan. I'm the state E-rate administrator for public libraries in Arizona. The E-rate deadline, application deadline for this next cycle, 2026-27, is on April 1st. So there are a lot of applicants in the process of making the application right now. The other thing I really wanted to draw your attention to is that Shelby, the Schools Health Libraries Broadband Coalition, is flying this upcoming week, March 10th. 11th, they're doing a fly-in to meet with the senators and representatives and their staff about USF funding that supports the E-rate program and several other programs as well. And for the sustainability, there has been problems, as we've discussed in this forum before, about the USF funding. One of the things they're going to showcase is the AZ-1, our broadband maps that Kelly Mukherjee and her team have put forth, and they will be showcasing the stories that are on AZ as one. I call it as one because that's what it is called, and this will help to show the impact of not just having it, but if we don't have the USF funds, and E-rate funding, what would be the impact of not having it? And that is so important for them to see data, stories, actual ground stories from the ground, showing how this is impacting the community. And I'm grateful to Kelly and her team for putting that up there so uh, picturesque and easy to understand. Thank you so much, Kelly and team.
You're welcome. It'll be coming out at 9 a.m. This morning, Mala. So
Okay.
if you're all following us on LinkedIn as one, AZ-1, you'll be able to see Mala's post with regards to Shelby.
Thank you. Back to you, Steve, unless there are questions.
Okay. So two things, Kelly, as long as this was a good transition for you, we always like to get an update from you, and you obviously have some good things happening. And so you want to give us a quick update. And do you want to also talk about, I don't know who else is on the board here, but about the ADEN AZBSN event coming up on the 7th of next month?
I'll try my best, Steve. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kelly Mukherjee with Arizona State University's Enterprise Technology. I support CIO Lev Gonick in our broadband and digital inclusion efforts, leading an initiative called AZ1. It's spelled AZ-1. And we do broadband mapping and storytelling. So this year, we're really trying to get more stories off the ground, more pins filling up the state of Arizona. We are about to launch a podcast. So sometimes our story maps take quite a bit of time for our students to put together. They are beautiful, but they take a long time. So if anyone is interested in being interviewed and telling us your community connectivity impact story, we would love to interview you and give our students a chance to have a conversation and get to know your work around broadband and digital equity. So I put my contact information in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. In terms of the ADEN and AZBSN super meeting, I think some information just went out about that. So I don't know if did anybody post it already? Yes, somebody just posted it in the chat. So thank you, Erin Lorendos, for doing that. She put all the information in there for April 7th. So you can read more about that, but you're all invited to come join us in focusing conversations around health as a super determinant. Broadband and digital equity and connectivity as a super determinant of health. It's very important that we're all connected. And so I think that's going to be the key topic of that meeting. So please come. Did I hit everything,
Aaron, you want
Steve?
to add anything? I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
I was just wondering if I covered all your questions, Steve.
I think so. I just want to mention one thing, and we're not going to spend time on it today, but Kelly and I had a really good conversation the other day about the future for digital equity, digital inclusion here in Arizona, and the possibility, who could be a lead entity to be able to pull that together for us here in Arizona. And so I don't want to get into that discussion today, but I think that's a future discussion for us about where do we go from here. So we'll talk about that. But I really enjoyed that conversation, Kelly. Okay, Aaron, do you have anything you want to add about the event on the 7th?
No, I just I copied and pasted Cindy's email from this morning. So if you didn't receive that, I would definitely reach out to her and get added to the list so that you can have the official save the date. But I put it in a couple of boxes because the chat box here is too small for our amazing information that we have to share.
Okay, anybody else have anything to update before we move on to hearing from McKindy? I guess not. So McKindy, it's up to you. You're on.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and give people a background. And do you have slides you want to? I think you have slides you want to share.
Yes, I do.
Too.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Can we all see my screen, please?
You started sharing, double click to enter. There you go.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Am I audible, please?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Makinde Ojo, um, the co-founder of True Connected, and also my background. I'm a network engineer and a telecommunication engineer. My background span over 17 years, and also I'm proud to say I'm a product of digital inclusion. I'm an agency, a college dropout, and technology happens to be my pathway to finding myself and reinventing myself. And with all humility, I do have over 17 industry certification. And also, I took pride in saying that in 2019, I happened to be the first radio frequency engineer that made the first call on the CBRS spectrum. So this morning, and CBRS is something I'm very particular about, even with limited understanding of how the policies and the framework works. But I believe that democratizing CBRS could be a catalyst for digital inclusion and economic mobility. I'll move to the next slide, please. And I'm going to show us the short hack of the story so that we can track where we're going for the next 15 minutes together. I will move through the six narrative hack. I call them the six steps, and the number one is the problem, the number two is the assets, and the number three is the gap, number four is the opportunity, and number five, the impact, and lastly, what is the ask? I move to the next slide, please. Right. And let's talk about the problem. From the slide, we can see uh, I'm going to picture a little scenario. Let's picture a household where school, job application, and even telehealth happens on just one device, maybe a phone or a little or tablet. Uh, if we look at it very well, that is not a lifestyle choice. That is the constraint. That is the inequity we are talking about in the digital inclusion space. And that is the real risk. And I believe that we can deploy network and still end up having stranded infrastructure. And, if people cannot adopt and retain the services, so we can understand that the problem is not only coverage, it's a problem of control. Because if you have access without control, that means that your confidence is not there, even with the devices. You might not be able to maximize your full potential. There could be enrollment friction and, early shun. And I always have this belief that if access is rented, inclusion will always be fragile. Now let's look at it from a very different standpoint while we move to the next slide, which is the asset. We talk about the asset. I'm going to explain CBRS in a very plain English. CBRS is a shared spectrum for shared prosperity. And I intentionally call it a shared spectrum for shared prosperity for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is I want us to think about CBRS from the spectrum access system, like the air traffic controlling all the radios available. It coordinates who transmits, who and where the transmission go, and when the transmission is going to head out. And if we look at CBRS, the three tiers of CBRS, the easy takeaway for CBRS and also for LTE, CBRS creates a pathway to deploy a private LTE and 5G, even a neutral host network without honing a spectrum. I emphasize on that, without honing a spectrum, meaning that the unused spectrum in the CBR on the CBRS spectrum can be the unused frequency rather on the CBRS spectrum can be redistributed, and make it a more shared spectrum, particularly in the rural community that the CBRS are deployed. And moving on to the next to the next step, which is the gap, which is warehousing versus utilization. And that is where I really want to delve into the importance of how CBRS could also bridge the digital divide. The next divide isn't just fiber. We know fiber is, very expensive, but the next divide is about governance and activation. We are all seeing the pattern. Coverage on paper doesn't equal quality in practice, and policy conversation can drift towards ownership instead of utilization. So let's redefine what success means from warehousing to utilization of the unused spectrum. Uh, and also, I would like to ask if the unused spectrum, can be, from a policy standpoint, like I mentioned earlier before starting the presentation there, from a policy standpoint and also at Washington level, if the leadership can start having the conversation with the telco about the warehouse spectrum that are not being used, particularly on the CBRS spectrum. And I'm going to move to the next slide, which talks about the opportunity. And the opportunity is community-based network enablement. And what that does is CBRS shines where the incumbent telcos are underserved or where speed and control matters. And think about, a dense housing unit where DCBS is deployed. What does that translate? It translates into better throughput, both downlink and uplink for those who are connected to that spectrum at that very particular location. And these are places where time to connect really matters, which are the rural area. Because, if you look at it, their proximity to the next maybe library could be about 10 to 15 miles. And a lot of these people do not have a reliable means of transportation to even transport themselves to get to the main city. And one of and also one of the I'm going to move to the next slide real quick and talking about the deployment reference architect. And if you look at the presentation, this talks about the different tiers of CBRS and also how this can be implemented. Number one, from site survey to RF planning, meaning that the funders have to work with different telcos and also backhaul validation, meaning we're not honing the spectrum, we're working on the existing spectrum that are already been there. And also we talk about the network operations center, particularly for the monitoring, and this can be co-honed by the community themselves. And there's going to be ongoing, most importantly, the ongoing support and escalation of issue, particularly for those who are having connectivity issue on the spectrum. And I'm going to move to the next slide, please. And here, this is talking about the 360 holistic approach of how True Connected can translate the CBRS policy into deployable network and sustainable community adoption, particularly as an implementation and outcome layer partner. And, our holistic approach, particularly, look at exactly why those resources that are being distributed or being given to this community are not really bridging this gap. And that is why our 360 holistic approach comes in for us to be able to support the ongoing work that other organizations are already doing in the Arizona digital inclusion space, and for us to be also be more inclusive by working with both different counties, different telcos, and also with different community. And I'm going to move to the next slide, which talks about how, the fundable model pilot that, is very, deployable, if the decision to go the route of CBRA. From the presentation, we can see from the phase one is going to include the readiness, which is going to be between 2 to 3 weeks with site selection. And this is all about the existing telecom sites that are already available. And also, there's going to be a lot of buy-in from stakeholders, alignment, governance structure, and particularly the baseline metric collection, which is going to be the baseline data that will be collected. One, let's, for instance, maybe a continuous RF wave data to particularly determine the best line of access to the site and also to better position in the radio for transmission. And moving to the phase two of the pilot, talking about the scale playbook, and this is going between 6 to 10 weeks. Documentation of the standard operating procedures, and also finalizing the cost model and develop an expansion plan, an investment-ready funding package. And the last phase, which is, the second phase, which is a 4 to 6 weeks, installing the CBRS core technology, onboarding household, and standing up, like I mentioned the previous slide, standing up a network operating center monitoring, and also training, cohort, particularly technician, like Ross was saying in the chat, making sure that because CBRS is a very special spectrum, and it requires you to be certified for you to be able to deploy the spectrum. I'm gonna move to the last slide, and this is talking about the implementation partner for adoption devices and the digital skills that could potentially, transform the economic mobility of any community that adopt CBRS. One, we can see from, the device plus readiness, which, provisioning of device, either it could be refurbished or new, setting up, and also one of the most important key, particularly in the digital inclusion space, is, sensitization about cyber hygiene. Because if you look at it critically, a whole lot of 9 out of 10 of all the disenfranchised community that do not have access. Most of them are just having access for the first time, and getting online might be their first opportunity to the outside world. And what that translates into, they are vulnerable. They are the first set of vulnerable people for scamming. So it's always very important to bake in cybersecurity hygiene from the ground up into the provisioning of all this of the devices. And lastly, the readiness and verification of basic support, which also falls under the umbrella of the cyber hygiene, meaning that there's going to be ongoing support, particularly for the core, also for the beneficiary. And talking about 30 to 60-day navigator sprint, that involves a three-part enrollment and adoption support, troubleshooting, triage, and escalation. That also falls under the continuous support. And one of the most important part is the retention focus, which will reduce the churn. And lastly, skills to workforce on ramp. Core based on digital literacy. That means based on the particular need of that certain community or those individuals. And also job readiness support. And for those who want to go into entrepreneurship, like nano degrees, micro enterprise, and online safety courses for them. And talking about where this went fast, this will involve a lot of inclusivity and collaboration among the counties, the cities, the tribe, and particularly be it aligned ISP, library and workforce board, community college, and the whole of the AZBSN ecosystem. And lastly, on my presentation, talking about the return on the investment. I call that both the social return and the economic return on the investment if CBRS is adopted as the engine, the catalyst for digital inclusion and economic mobility. For more information, please reach out to us at info@trueconnected.org. Thank you so much. I'm open to questions, and I'll stop sharing for a minute.
Okay. Questions, comments? Paul, you got anything you want to add?
Other than the fact that I do support the CBRS spectrum, I really think that the ability to use a shared spectrum actually does lead to a democratization. So I really love the fact that you use that term within the presentation, because having the shared spectrum available means that if you're in a county, for instance, that's got like a rural county, right? There's not a lot of folks who have actually snapped up all the spectrum in the rural counties. And so therefore you might have up to 70 megahertz out of the 150 megahertz that's being acquired by the PAL, right? So if you've only got one or two providers who actually bidded for it, and they might only have, let's just say 20 megahertz, you get 130 megahertz that's potentially available. And so that really does open up. Now, this is, I think, the first, and I might be wrong about this, but this could be the first real shared spectrum process, from what I understand, and the way the FCC works it too. The training to be a CPI, there are different providers out there who do provide that training. But when it comes to the actual install, you can have somebody actually physically do the install, but the CPI is the person who validates and records all the information into the SAS. So they're the ones on the hook for, the correct reporting to the authorities through the SAS. In the Phoenix, I've worked on Phoenix Deck, working with a peer from Phoenix Union School District. And we deployed a CBRS network. It's now across 12 poles in the center of Phoenix, as well as in the Sutherland area. There's an area down there around the South Mountain area that we have some coverage on as well. I'll drop some information into the chat for it. But there's certainly, I will say, forces at play who would like to see the CBRS spectrum be part of the 800 megahertz auction, to acquire it. But once you've got the vertical assets in place, CBRS is a spectrum that can be used. At the moment, it is definitely a spectrum, and we've deployed it successfully in several locations. So I think it is something that you can get into. There's not a lot of providers within that space. So that does take a little bit more work, but it can be done. And yeah, I could talk about shared spectrum. And I just think CBRS is one tool in the toolkit. It's not the tool, it's a tool. And once you've got the vertical assets in place, you can then join and look at other spectrums too, based on the areas of need and what you're going to be doing. But there's some fairly significant telco providers who have snapped up CBRS, and they may not be using it as a direct facing technology with their end consumer, but they're using it on the back end to do different services. There's also some fabulous examples of CBRS being applied in some European contexts as well, where, for instance, a large manufacturing or a port facility might deploy CBRS as a way to be able to reach areas across, many, many acres of installation. So I've been following a lot of the European work as well. And so I will just stop right there because I don't want to turn this into a dissertation. But thank you, Steve, for asking the question.
Well, I knew that CBRS is a big thing for you, Paul. It has been. You've talked about it many times. So I knew you had something to say. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, a quick question for our two experts on spectrum. Any thoughts on the ATSC 3.0 and where it's going, and what can we do with it? How's it going to impact what you all are doing?
Russ, you want to go on that? I do not have an immediate answer to that, but most definitely.
To be frank, neither do I, Dave. That's a really good question. I've been trying to track where things are going, and I don't have enough of an inside track to see what's going to happen. I am concerned that it might go away because of the commercial pressure. But I think there needs to be more technology that can support the spectrum, and I think that's one of the underlying problems. But I believe that there needs to be more work in using it, and those power providers, for instance, who do actually have CBRS, right? And there's quite a few. I think we need to find out what their stories are. What are they doing with it? Just because it's available, did they buy it just because they want, they're spectrum hungry, right? But I've also talked to a rural community where they had, for instance, they had EBS licenses. Okay, EBS is a different part of the spectrum, and they were approached by a commercial provider to buy out their EBS license. And I said to them, if you've got an EBS license, don't release it. It's not like real estate. It's like real estate, really. If you sell it, you've lost it. You're never going to get it back. And I said, you got to keep whatever spectrum you have. So I think we have to try and keep whatever spectrum is available, because not everything is going to be a commercially driven project. There is still a need for a lifeline service, lifeline access, and CBRS just enables everyone to get into it. But your question is something that I would like to look into further, because I really don't know what all the true implications are, other than we got to be ready to adapt, because we may be forced to adapt. But yeah.
I can give you a very brief insight as to what I could do with it, because I come from the content end. This is going to be content driven, and this is the thing we're all trying to figure out. What I could do with it today, if one of the networks that, various networks in Tucson, and I think they have it, I just haven't actually looked at it on my television. But what I could do with it now, and it offers a fair amount of interactivity with the IP part, but what I could do would be broadcast a football game where you could choose your own camera angles. So live sports, but I could also do that with a movie. I could have alternate endings or all those kinds of things, and that can be done. I just don't know how it's going to be monetized. I know that what we all know is that there's a whole lot of that spectrum that's controlled in the big picture by a relatively small number of companies.
Well, and that's the thing about CBRS, right? It's 150 megahertz. 70 megahertz of the spectrum is set aside for the PAL providers. And so the PAL providers are those who have actually gone through and, purchased. They won the auction. They have a purchased bandwidth, and those are generally done. And I'm going by memory here. I think it's like 10 megahertz bands, and some of them might have 20 megahertz. But it means there's still a lot there that is available for use. Now, that's using what they call the GAA. So, we're subject to interference, because the PAL providers have priority, and then the incumbents have priority over the PAL providers. And so the incumbents are, like your dish satellite stations that are earthbound, your the Navy, the military, right? And there has been instances where the military has been conducting an event that required shutting down CBRS. And so it's a spectrum that can be shut down very quickly. And that's just the way it happens. And I did hear of a case a couple of years ago where that happened. And it was something to do, I think it was out California way, but it actually then impacted Arizona as well. And suddenly, the spectrum wasn't available. It wasn't for a long period of time, but it did happen. Now, in terms of content, it's just another way to deliver access. What data you send across it could be almost anything. But I've seen it used for networks where things that are chatty, rather than putting it on the traditional network that people might have had from Wi-Fi, they then put it on to CBRS, right? It's a way of getting rid of some of that chatty traffic. But there's some great examples out of Europe. And so I would suggest looking at some of that. That might help inform you what other people are doing, because they, to be frank, they've been in the game a lot longer than the US when it comes to CBRS in terms of that spectrum.
Mark Goldstein, is, there's still a cost on a per customer or user basis, right, to use a geographic server. What's that, in a $2 range or something per month per user?
It depends if you, okay, so you got category A and category B. Category A is basically the end user devices. It's based on power that operate within the home. Those category A devices don't necessarily have a license attached to them. You don't need one unless you have ramped up the power and it's an outdoor unit, that sort of thing. You got category B, and I've seen pricing anywhere from under $2. Now things have changed, up to $2, $3 per device per month, right? But in terms of the scheme of things, that's pretty low from a licensing standpoint. But yes, there is a cost that's
Sure. I just thought people should recognize, it's not like Wi-Fi. You just can't necessarily come on and start using it in the way that you would open spectrum access.
Yeah, that's true. But one of the problems that we have with CBRS from an end user device standpoint is a lot of your traditional Wi-Fi access points don't support that spectrum. And that is actually a major impediment. Let's just say if you had your regular, and I'll just say like Linksys or D-Link or Ubiquiti Wi-Fi access point that supports, 5 and 6, if it actually supported CBRS, I think you would see a pretty big jump in people trying to use it. But that's actually one of the major impediments, is that it doesn't support that particular band. There's not a lot of devices that do, but until that happens, I think it's going to be a little more boutique. But there's good examples of how CBRS is being used on trains. It's being used in that fashion. It's being used in ports and such. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of use cases out there, but also going back to what we were talking about earlier, about what Kelly was talking about, student stories. I think we also need the stories of how people are using CBRS, especially in a commercial environment. I don't think we see enough commercial stories. I can point to probably half a dozen educational stories across the US, but I don't see the commercial stories getting shared in particular, because they like to keep it quiet about what they're using the spectrum for. It's like, hey, I'm not going to the Ford guy is not going to tell the Tesla guy what they're doing behind the wheel, right? And so some of that becomes very commercially sensitive, and that's why I find that when I look for examples, I find them a lot easier out of Europe, because they're a lot more open about discussing things. And I've been part of several conferences for several years now where, I love the European conferences, other than the fact that they're at really bad hours of the day. But generally, they present some really good content. There's also great examples of how it's being used in Indonesia, India, Pakistan, some of the Nordic countries as well. But yeah, I'll just stop there. But you're right, there is a cost, but it's not as high as what it could be. So I like the fact that it's pretty low.
Mackenzie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you so much, Paul. That was, an in-depth, analysis, more, and like Kelly said, hopefully we'll begin to see more CBRS stories, particularly, from, the really underserved community. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present this today, and I look forward to a continuous conversation. Thank you so
Great. Well,
much.
thank you, McKinley, for being here. Hopefully we'll see you whenever you can be here.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Bill.
Let me just add quickly. CBRS itself is really gaining traction in the warehouse automation space. That's one area. And then Kelly, I'm going to try to find this for you, but I know that in Tucson there is an agricultural program that is being that in fact it just wrapped up an event where they're using CBRS to automate farming and advance the entire ability to utilize automated tractors and things like that. So I'm going to try to find you some information on that.
Thank you so much. And Paul, if you can, I saw your message about CBRS and Mesa. If you can help connect me with the stories, would appreciate that warm introduction and connection. Thank you.
Bill, is that Caterpillar that you were talking about?
No, it's and I'm searching for the name of it. I actually visited with them with one of my clients, and one of my clients has actually supported them in the development of part of this capability. Caterpillar, I'm sure, is there, but there are a number of other people that participated in this event, and it is an entire group led in Tucson by the farming community, and they're building out a very extensive network and have significant plans for what they're doing there.
Is that in southern Arizona or Tucson?
Tucson.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have anything else that they want, any comments or anything else, any updates or that they want to share before we end for today? We'll actually be done early today.
Just quickly, the Caterpillar proving ground is not too far from me, and so actually both of them have them. So they're definitely actively working on the remotely controlled haul trucks. My understanding from the inside is it's quite a ways off, but they're actively running them around here. So the Tucson, their offices are in Tucson, but the proving grounds is down here by me.
True. Okay. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Then I do believe we are done for today. I will be sending out the information about the the meeting next month, and encourage you all to sign up and to participate, to help spread the word. And with that, I do believe we're done for today. Thank you all.
Cheers.
Thanks, Steve.